Sorry, Don.
I was going to introduce myself. That's okay.
Okay.
Oh, do you not?
We'll do that in a
I'm
second.
sorry.
In the essence of time, let's go ahead and call the workshop to order. If everybody would please rise and join me in the pledge.
It's harder, easier said than done.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'll try to.
We're going to go around just for the record, introduce ourselves real quick, but before we do that, I just want to thank everybody for coming. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate everything the two cities and the county do for us, particularly with our school safety officers and with other sports units. We honestly could not do it without you, so we appreciate that. Purpose of today's meeting, some of these things have come up and we've talked about things that could possibly save us money and or benefit all of our employees. We thought let's just get together and have a discussion about it. There's no expectation today that everybody's going to go back and take a vote and we'll do something. It's really just to open the dialogue and start the discussion and see if, as this group thinks there's need to continue this discussion or kill it, so quite frankly. Just for the record, I'm Clarence Thacker, Osceola School Board District 4.
Ricky Booth, Osceola County School District 5.
Good job, Rick.
There, I had something else I was going to say and it didn't work out.
Every now and then your filter kicks in.
Yes, yes it does. Yes,
Tim Weishauer, Osceola School Board District 3.
Deborah Pace, Superintendent, Osceola Schools.
Brandon Arrington, District 3, Osceola County Commissioner.
Don Fisher, Osceola County Manager.
Viviana Janer, Osceola County Commission, District 2.
Jim Fisher, Seat 4, City of Kissimmee.
Jeff Odell, Kissimmee Police Department.
Pete Gauntlet, St. Cloud Police Department.
Mike Steigerwald, Kissimmee City Manager.
Veronica Miller, St. Cloud Assistant City Manager.
Dave Askey, Seat 4, City Council, St. Cloud.
Keith Trey, City Council of St. Cloud, Seat 5.
Cheryl Grieve, District 4, Osceola County Chairman.
Terry Castillo, District 1, Osceola County School Board.
Thank you all very much. And what we wanted to start with today is just to give you a little background from our viewpoint where this came from. We instituted a health clinic, wellness clinic, 2-3 years ago. Wellness center, I knew I would call it the right thing. It's been a great thing for our employees. It's had some hiccups, there's been some learning issues with it. But one problem, there's kind of a little bit of 2 issues that we wanted to talk to with this group. One is it's located right over here across the street from the jail on Simpson Road, which is fine for all of us sitting in this room at this minute if we had to go there. It's not really that great if you teach at Harmony or at Poinciana or some of these other places. We know that there's other groups here have health centers in different places. We just thought we might want to have a discussion. Is there any way we can share services at those different facilities? I don't think anybody's saying, okay, everybody that goes to the clinic that's in Poinciana, the county pays for it. We're not saying that at all, but is there a way to share the facilities to make them more accessible to all our employees? Same thing with your employees. If the city of Kissimmee has an employee, which I'm sure they do, lives in St. Cloud, there may be one in that area that a different branch of the government has that could possibly be used. The other thing that's driving this conversation on our side, quite frankly, is we are self-insured. My hunch is several of you are. But we have, which means you keep your trust fund at a certain level, we have been running $1 million a month over budget in our health care since last summer. We don't see an end in sight to that right now. Clearly, it doesn't take a lot of math figures, $12 million a year we don't have. So we are covering it. We are not going to get under in our reserves at this point. We will not get under our health care reserves, but it's a problem for us. And again, there's kind of the 2 issues. Are there things we can do to help each other? Are any of you experiencing this problem? If so, we're happy for any suggestions on how to help with ours. Anything you might have or think of. Say, if you tried this, we're looking for anything you can do to help us. And after we have this conversation, we'll go to the safety.
And I'll just frame it a little differently, because it's not just about helping us. That's not why we asked for the meeting. It's about helping each other and ultimately helping the taxpayers, which we all respectively serve. each one of us duplicating services or expending dollars in a space to where somebody else already is just a waste when we look at the drain that it places on the citizens of Osceola County at large and the respective cities within. The other thing is, you know, the phrase that you hear people say a lot is, you know, well, healthcare is broken and, you know, we need to fix healthcare. So Deborah and I were in a meeting with somebody, and the comment was made that I really appreciated, which is healthcare is not broken. It's working exactly as it was designed to work. And so the factor with that then becomes that the rising cost of healthcare is not going to go away. It's going to continue to be a strain on every employer, including everybody sitting in this room. And if we don't figure out a way collectively to come together, each one of us at some point will have a breaking point financially to where the costs just continue to get to a point where they escalate beyond what you're able to control or what we're able to control. The desire intent, at least from me, and I think most likely from the entire school board, is how do we just work together and collaborate? And you guys will recall that we've had this conversation before, and it was about 3 or 4 years ago that we sat, whether it was in this room or we did the meeting over at the Civic Center a number of years ago, and we said, what can we do? And we weren't able to get anywhere on that. The Florida School Boards Association about 10 years ago tried building a health consortium throughout the state of Florida to help school boards all come together, and it didn't work right then either. So I advanced the conversation about a year and a half, probably about a year ago now, and the same thing came up. Oh, we tried it before and it didn't work. And I said, well, the landscape is different now. The players are different now. The opportunity is different now. So just because we tried it before it didn't work doesn't mean we shouldn't revisit it. And one of the things that I think is both unique and beneficial to our community is that literally the people around this room and around this table all respect one another, all get along. We have very good working relationships, and there's no reason why in a community like ours we can't figure out how to put our heads together and figure out how to help everybody, which ultimately helps our citizens as a whole. So,
Mayor Alvarez from Kissimmee, welcome.
Welcome. Sorry.
That's okay.
Traffic was,
No problem. I'm sorry.
Can we first talk about what we do have in place?
Sure.
So you talked about you have your facility on Simpson Road.
Mm-hmm. We have one facility, and that is the one on Simpson Road.
Okay, we have just one over by Council on Aging.
Okay.
So
We
they're
don't
very
have
close.
anything in
Okay.
Poinciana.
I didn't know if you did. I don't
No,
Yeah.
it's just state health.
And then City of Kissimmee, you still have yours over?
Yep,
by the
essential
Y?
services near OHS.
Yeah.
Okay.
We have ours in the State Street, Montana.
On Montana?
Montana.
Okay.
What's the capacity in all those facilities currently? Are they
We're full.
80%? So you're completely 100% at capacity?
But we're looking at some things that could possibly increase that capacity.
And is it, I mean, like with ours, initially you did you did your blood work, you did everything else, and they were actually helping with a plan depending, say, if you had high cholesterol, those kind of things, because obviously that's what's going to keep the cost down. Is that your same kind of model that you have currently?
It's
What capacity is that?
Supposed-
Deborah, you want to?
With the sheriff's office too, so-
Want to get Ken or somebody?
size up.
The model is supposed to be about population health management, although we have not implemented a fully required wellness component yet. We've encouraged it, but we haven't implemented it. We do anticipate, we're currently working with our union and with our consultants to implement a wellness policy that would be more carrot than stick approach, in that if people did X, Y, Z, including perhaps their blood work, their health screening, their risk assessment, those types of different activities, participated in our 5K, you would accumulate a number of points that then would result in a reduced deductible for whichever health plan you're on. So that's really the direction that we're going, because we haven't been able to leverage that wellness piece yet at the clinic.
Okay. And ours is voluntary as well right now.
Yeah, we have some incentive programs. It's voluntary, it's carrot driven. The thing that we did, and I think the superintendent and I've talked about it before, that steadied our course is to go to a health reimbursement account, which was very difficult to do, but it made employees realize that getting away from the copays and realizing how much it actually cost really helped us out a lot. And then through the clinics, driving toward the generics and those types of things.
What's the capacity at the Kissimmee St. Cloud? Osceola?
Space-wise, we probably could grow a little bit more, not too much, because it's a shared building right now. with actually Lynx, who is looking to expand and move out, so we may have the potential to grow later on. Our utilization is probably close to 90%. It's
Okay.
like mid-80s, something like that. What we do is very similar to Osceola County. It's an incentive-based type of a model. We did the self-insurance first, along with the HRA, which now puts a cost on everything that you do. The employee gets to see just how much it costs. And then we turn around and say, hey, you can use the clinic. You got your choice between 2 different doctors, a PA. It's open 5 days a week, 1 day a week late into the evening. It's free. There's no co-pays. You can get over 300 prescription drugs for free. You don't have to take time off from work if you use our facility. And it's really, our demographic may be a little different than yours. We've got a lot of folks that field workers and public works, parks and recreation, our public safety folks. These are folks that are just not generally going to go to the doctor unless they're really, really, really sick. So this encourages them to go more frequently, get their free blood work, and then we catch stuff before it becomes a major issue, and we manage things that are a major issue.
And I think ours are managed by the same, Kissimmee's and the counties are managed by the same company. And we know from the vetting that we did that who you utilize can make a big difference as well.
Yeah, we have.
And I think both have seen a cost savings thus far.
It's kind of hard to quantify it. You see a benefit to the employees. It's really kind of the health indicators, trends. They change so much because of employees coming in and out. So whether it is actually trackable in terms of a savings is one thing, but it is certainly an employee benefit. And if we can, as providers, get them in touch with wellness and being more whole in that way, it's definitely an advantage.
Now, we've seen the cost of our insurance has got down because of the usage of the.
Well, certainly, what we see is that the rise is slow.
Correct.
The rise, yes, it constantly goes up, but we think that
The two
the
things
rate is
that
not.
we saw is correct is the annual increases are nowhere near as significant as they used to be. We were hitting 10, 15% a year.
Yeah,
and now it's very, very little.
6, 7, 8.
Yeah. But the other thing that we saw is we used to. You guys are going to laugh at this because of the size of your organization, but we'd budget like $8 million in claims a year, and the first couple of years of the clinic we were able to go down to 7, and then it cost us $500,000 to run the facility, so we netted a savings of $500,000 a year. Really, that's not
$1 million a month.
and that's cool and everything, but in the realm of a $200 million budget, it's not a whole heck of a lot. The main issue is, as Don talked about, is that really has helped us to fend off the major increases because we are catching a lot of those major issues, heart disease, diabetes, those types of things early on because the employees are utilizing the facility and getting their blood work done annually.
How many people does everybody cover? You, the county?
We're like 3,000 is what we share. This the clinic's different. We share the clinic. We share the clinic with the sheriff's office, so our number's a little bit different.
But that includes the sheriff's office because
clinic
they're not
does.
here yet. But that's fine because but that number includes their.
You're a constitution.
No, just
It's just county, right?
tax collector,
no one else uses it. It's the sheriff and the county. So we part. Long story to it, but certainly they can in terms of open up this conversation. That if you really want to open this up, you could talk it to the tax collector,
And I should mention we partner with Toho Water Authority. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So you're at 1,300. You said.
We have 1,300.
With
And
Toho.
does that include Toho?
Yeah.
You're 3,000.
we have 1,500 employees plus family.
To's a little over 300.
And that doesn't
I think the
include
sheriff's department at
sheriff.
one time
Right.
told me they were
He thinks
at
so.
1,000. They had 1,000 people on there.
That might be.
No, it has to be more than that. The
St.
sheriff
Cloud has
doesn't.
400.
Oh, sure, yeah.
400 each.
And our plan is similar
Yeah.
to Kissimmee's
So
also,
it can't be-
where
it can't
we
be the same.
gave our employees the options that they could be in the preferred plan and do those incentives and pay less, or they can go ahead and pay more, and they didn't have to worry about coming in and doing the biometric screening. They have options to build up their points however they can in order to qualify for the preferred plan.
Do you know what your overall cost has been doing?
I do not. I can look at my HR director.
The total cost for all medical, about $4.5 million.
So are you holding your own though the last couple of years?
We've been really lucky the past 2 years.
So, yeah, we cover, Deborah just showed the number, how many?
92.
92, I thought it was a few more than that, 9,200. So, I mean, even doubling all these numbers combined doesn't get us to there, so.
How many, Mike?
1,300. And that's with Toho.
Yeah, Toho. And so there would be potential with the tax collector, property appraiser, supervisor of elections.
And I would tell you if you're having this broad conversation about healthcare in Osceola County and all the folks at the table, I would tell you I believe there's a need for nonprofits in Osceola County too to have an opportunity to participate in a better market. If there was a way they could be pulled and have an opportunity to get open to those clinics and things of that nature, I think would be a big help. If you're going to have a giant conversation, I would just throw that out there.
For me, there's two pieces of this. One is the overall health insurance, health care side of what it is that we do and we provide, and then there's the wellness centers and what we have as a way of helping deliver and provide those services to our employees. One of the things that I think is interesting too is you start putting together, even if you didn't put all these numbers together, but the sheer scale of them creates an opportunity where we create our own network and our own direct-to-market negotiation opportunities. With the size of who we are, there's no reason why we couldn't have a bigger influence on what the costs that we're all paying or what our employees are paying to receive the type of care that they need. We know the downline benefits that come from this. You know, healthier employees are not taking off as much work. Or in our case, we're not dealing with substitutions. With you guys, you're not losing skilled labor in the workforce at any given point in time. People are happier, their health. I mean, all these things that just trickle out, and then you talk about the quality of life component for employees, it becomes a no-brainer. The other part is, you know, everybody, not just our employees, your employees, just across the board, everybody's having conversations about the economy and the rising cost of different things, and health insurance is one of those things, and healthcare is one of those things that's just scaling out of control as a nation, or really as a world, really, but as a nation in particular as we think about this. So we've got to figure out, and the reason I say we is because if we all go back into our individual silos, we each do our things, we'll all make the decisions that we think are best for the organizations that we represent and the constituents we serve. The other part would be is then we look up to whoever, and we turn to the state, or we turn to the Congress, and we say, well, you guys have to figure this out. I think that's the exact opposite of reality. I think we need to figure out here at the local level where we're the closest to our employees, we're closest to the community, we're closest to the need, and begin to get out of those silos and have these cross-collaboration conversations about what are the things that we can do. And I know, like, from the school board perspective, one of the things that's come up in the past is, you know, well, the size of the district, the cost factors, the various demographic components, who's driving what cost in what arena. I know I'll say for myself, and I think every board member that's here would echo this, we're not looking for anybody here to pay our way. We're not looking for anybody here to help drive down costs so that we save money but that you guys break even. And whatever formula needs to put in place so that everybody's paying what they should be paying, including us, and getting the overall direct benefit is the way it should be. And so if the actuaries are done that show that we should be paying X and you should be paying Y, fine. We don't care. As long as the net result is that it's better off for everybody, that's the spirit of where we're coming from and what we'd like to see happen.
And can we expand things out possibly and give all of our employees physical location options that are better suited for all? I mean, whether you say you work in St. Cloud, live in Louisiana, so there's some options there. Maybe not, again, not cost savings, but quality savings for our staff. And if we all believe in the wellness center, and we believe the purpose of the wellness center is to treat diabetes before it's problems, treat hypertension before it's crippling, easier access is, I got to believe, is a plus too. So, right. But I want to echo what Tim said. We've had this conversation, I know, a long time ago, and the school district's demographics for health insurance are not great. They're not. Yours are all better. And the intent of this is not in any way to push that back to you. there are a lot of people smart enough to figure out, based on your demographics, what everybody's cut is or whatever. It's not meant, the purpose of the conversation to me was not meant to get anybody to share it. We're happy to if you want to.
Yeah, yeah, we'd be happy.
Yeah, I bet. No, I'll chime in if I can. I think as long, you guys have framed the conversation perfectly. I think that's the concern, obviously, from everybody else at the table is what that share looks like. And Tim, I think you're right. I said this to Don. At the end of the day, whether you're asking them for more or we're asking them for more, we're still asking the same people for more money at the end of the day to provide the service. And if we can create a greater economy of scale, I think as a whole, or is even more of a collective, I think we can all win. And I'd be open to our staffs having that conversation and seeing what that looks like. I mean, I'm not smart enough to tell you what that whole framework breaks down to, and I know Ricky might be, but
I think that's probably part of our ask. Is it worth getting our people and our staff
Correct.
that have,
Is it worth
that know this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
That was
Get
where
together,
I was
I think
gonna
so.
go.
To get together and
Is it
talk
worth
about
having
it
the conversation?
and assign them to take a look and see if
because I know when we partnered with the sheriff on the first health clinic, the conversation at that time was, well, are we really being able to service our employee base? Specifically with a lot of our employees being on the east side of town, is that really a great spot for them to go? So I think
we got two within 2 blocks.
so. I mean, I'm open to it.
Yeah, and do you guys use, one of the switches we made in the past 3 or 4 years is we went away from an insurance broker advising us in terms of where we should head in healthcare and hired contract with somebody independent that makes recommendations to us in terms of where we should head, which I would plan on pulling her in, at least from the county side, just to have that objective. And I don't know what anybody else does in that regard, but they could be useful to guide us on
We
best
have that as
practices.
Yeah, we have more of the broker part as opposed to the
Advisor.
I agree, Don, because my issue with all this is, and I'll say this, and I mean respect to everybody, is we can't go at this trying to find why it can't work. We have to go at it finding why it would work, and we need innovation and thought leaders to be at the table to figure out what that is. And you have to be willing to say, we're going to break the mold of what we've traditionally done. All of us in our lives, our default position is to go back to what we're most comfortable with and what we've always known, seen, or done in the past. And in this type of conversation, it has to be blow it up and put it back together, and let's figure out what it should look like. If we were creating what type of health care product we were providing for the respective government employees in Osceola County, and we were creating that today, how would we create it? Not what have we been doing for 10, 20, 30, 50, 80 years, and now how do we shift it 1 degree to one direction or the other? That's not going to move the needle enough for us to really find the long-term benefits that we need. The last thing I'll say is the geography is interesting. You think about where everybody said their locations are. You know, the entire west side of the county, the entire south end of the county, you go into District 1, District 3, some of the southern parts of District 4, they're not even really touched. You know, District 2 is barely even touched, really, when you think about the geography of where they're located. And so, it is actually,
Leave now, leave them, and they'll fix
But I
it.
think to Mr. Weisner's point, there's a great opportunity there for us to say maybe something that comes out of this, and I'm just throwing this out there, is that maybe St. Cloud wouldn't be a part of this, but we can partner somehow together to have a facility in Point Santa or have a facility in BVL, and what would that look
on
like?
the other side of St. Cloud.
Yeah, and you know, we have a ton of employees that live east of here. I would actually think that probably most of our employees, I don't know, I'm making stuff up now, but it sounds good. We do have a ton of employees that live on the east side of the county and into the St. Cloud area. And so, I mean, to
There's
have
about 14,000 people covered in this group right here.
Yep.
I don't know what it would be if you throw the other. Sure.
Well, and that's what I was going to talk about, was geography. When we're having this conversation is where it makes sense. And I think knowing where our employees live may be more of the target. And then kind of work backwards with it to say, okay, and then who may have something in that area, or do we give something right here to gain something there?
I'm sure HR people can do it.
Yeah.
But again, having the right thought leaders, I think as Mr. Weisner said, that's absolutely what you have to have, because I'm just throwing things out here. I'm not saying I'm one of those folks, but certainly to look at anything and everything that could help all of us would be a benefit to each and every resident of this county. And I think the fact that we're able to all get together and sit here and have this conversation is a testament to the leadership that we have in this county right now. And so I do genuinely appreciate all of you. So I think this is,
About the
whether
two-
we go
two
anywhere or not,
cities, y'all
we're
think it's
able to
worth
have this conversation.
Getting people involved in the conversation.
I mean, one of our biggest worries is, I mean, 90% of our employees live in the city, and if they use the services, and if it's a bunch of the other employees that drive through or live in the area, we're already maxed out on our space. 35 hours, it's not full 40 hours right now, but it's still, it's a worry of any extra capacity for a city, city employee just gets chewed up.
But I think if we're all in it together, we all.
Yeah, then we can have multiple.
Push and solve that.
You got more power with 14,000 people.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, Keith, my opinion on that would simply be that whatever you guys can handle within your capacity, any strain that gets placed on that as a result of this collaboration just gets, everyone ends up picking up and backfilling that, whether it's expansion of facility, operations, so on and so forth. I mean, if we're going to do it right, we've got to be able to understand that if all of a sudden all the county employees, because they're all on the east side, are putting a strain on your wellness center, the school board are putting them on, that's fine. We've got to work that out and just say we've got to do what's right by one another to make this proper.
And then, so just going back on the main issue that caused this, is it higher number of claims or higher severity or longer hospital stays? Like what caused the 12 million?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And just the overall cost as well.
Because I mean, it seems like a big number, but it's $1,300 per insured employee or person on the plan. So it is a big number in the aggregate, but I just didn't know if I guess
that's what you spend on your.
No, that's what you guys, the $12 million over 9,200.
Yes.
It's about a $60 million a year spend in aggregate.
We were at $50 million.
Not that long ago.
Year and a half.
When Clarence and I started, it's grown that
Is it
much.
our fault?
I was gonna say.
Did we do this?
Well, it started with Tim came.
That's true.
What did I miss?
So then,
Our overall trend is about 8%. Medical's about 9 of that. 4.6 is the pharmacy piece. We've actually done a very good job with driving people towards the generic drugs, but we have had some catastrophic issues that were really significant.
Yeah,
5.6% trend
increase, wow.
in catastrophic pieces.
And now,
So,
what was the savings when you guys went self-insured per year?
it's been so long.
I doubt you saved
don't
12 million a year. Like, is it easier to go back to?
Anyone 600.
There's only like
600 is
one-
the number where you start self-insuring. 600.
There's like one large district
Okay.
that is still insured, traditionally insured, whatever you call it, but I think that's Volusia. Is that right, Tim? Is it Volusia?
Hillsborough.
But, it is true
But there's like
that
one.
67% of our population are female. And so,
Babies.
And young.
childbearing age, so,
Well, statistically,
that hasn't
the
changed.
younger generations
It's
are
been
not
that-
really
it's
reaching
been that
the
for-
levels that we are.
Yeah,
So
it's always
maybe
been
we can
that
see a
way.
decrease in
70
this cost
years,
savings.
so that's not a change.
And if I may, concern on time on everyone here, I mean, around the room, we're all saying the same thing. There's an opportunity to create a better system. I think that next should be do what we do best, is give direction to our staff to get together, they're the experts, and let them brainstorm on the possible way to get this thing moving forward and finding solutions. Because we're all keep going around the room saying the same thing. We all agree that
I had
there's
to,
to do, so
I want to make sure.
I think that as elected officials, we should now just give directions to our staff and have them brainstorm and come up with a plan.
Great
And then set
segue.
another meeting and we'll meet together and staff will fill us in and they're the experts.
Everybody kind of head nod?
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Having that conflict?
And we're not demanding
So
a
noted.
wall or anything. So it should go pretty
Just a
quick.
big net.
It's a canal.
Just a big
I think they got
net.
it.
Big safety net.
Well, I would assume that you guys want us to have something prepared with all of our respective budgets coming forward, if we came up with some ideas. So
Yeah,
I think it's a good point.
Certainly, I think time is of the essence.
Yeah.
because Every day, we're all spending.
Yeah, I think the next meeting should be when staff has already come up with a plan in action. Just set up another meeting, let's get together and let's move forward.
Only thing I would ask personally would be that each of the respective administrators make this part of your priority of when you guys get together next time, whenever that is. I know you guys meet regularly. Tomorrow? Okay.
Is it tomorrow?
Well, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
the problem is that, time goes really fast, and I know all of us are busy, and there's 1,000 things that each one of us individually or collectively are working on. And, we started this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, I think in its first iteration with this group or most of this group that's around the table. And time will get away from us really fast if we're not intentional about it. And particularly as we start getting towards those budget seasons, of course, you guys, the admins in the room, you're going to be inundated with work and other aspects to pull you towards that. So
It's not going to be lost on tomorrow's work.
Okay, well, just
Is that the leader's lunch tomorrow? Good.
If Mike and Don and Veronica will send me the people on your team that you would want to be a part of a conversation, then I'll have my team run with getting a meeting set up. And I think you have the right people in the room. Everybody brought their supporting cast that we've heard our direction.
Yeah, I
So-
think staff
Sounds
got
good.
as much direction as they need to move forward.
I'm going to throw one other thing out.
Okay.
It's just, as you guys get together, think benchmark pricing, think emergency clinics that are already in existence around the county, what partnerships with that might look like instead of building brick and mortar, negotiating contracts with some of the operators for our employees to utilize the existing facilities and services. Anything and everything that will provide an opportunity for greater access, greater care, and greater savings and leveraging our power and size in the community has got to be looked at. I don't, just personally, I don't want it to just be, okay, well, how do we, again, make a small little change here or there? You've got to think big and you've got to think broad if we're going to be able to solve some of this.
Any other thing on that? If not, we'll move on to the next topic for June. School safety and security. Again, from this whole board, I can tell you, we could not provide these school safety officers without your help and assistance. That's not happening everywhere in the state. We appreciate it. We know it's hard. We know it's a tough ask. We know it's a struggle for everybody in here. So we just kind of want to get it on the table as we move forward. We don't know what's going to happen in the legislative session coming up as far as money, what will come back or not come back. We don't know. Nobody knows what things are going to look like, but we're all going to start on working on our budgets pretty soon. And I guess we're certainly not looking for necessarily the answer today, but looking for kind of getting it on the table for everybody to start thinking about it. If there's going to be any major changes, we need to know, quite frankly, as soon as possible. If we've got to figure something else out, we certainly want this relationship to continue. We think the students are citizens of the county, so they're all part of counties and cities, part of being protected. But we just kind of wanted to open it up for discussion on any issues, thoughts, or anything. Tim, were you going to?
I can. Last week I was with one of the commissioners from the MSD commission that was put together and was going through their report. I don't know if you guys have looked at the report and what's happening there.
MSD?
Margie Stoneman Douglas commission that was put together as a result of the tragedy in South Florida. And so looking at that, it's number one, this is absolutely going to be addressed again in the legislature. There's no question about that. Number two, one of the things that's going to be looked at is what the legislature originally intended with being able to use guardians at schools as opposed to law enforcement officers, whether it be deputies or police officers, and redefining and looking at what that should look like. Polk County's example, I know that they're using guardians as opposed to deputized officers in some of their schools. The charter piece and the traditional piece is going to be readdressed as well. There's a philosophical conversation that surrounds that. In my opinion, so you know, is that I think we're going to have to get past some of that because, as Mr. Thacker said, whether the student is in a private Christian school or a traditional school or a charter school, it's really irrelevant when we think about what this conversation is. They're Osceola County students, and they all have to be protected and served equally. all that's going to happen. What's going to happen with the funding that was allocated with regard to school safety and security, all that's being brought back up again. The Florida School Boards Association, we're advancing as a top legislative priority to readdress all of these things that I'm touching on from a statewide collective from the school boards. Our school board has made school safety and security a #1 priority for us as a legislative initiative, and Olay will be working with us on that as well. So the conversation will come up. I think some would be maybe impressed with the way that we've all worked together last year to figure it out and to make sure we did the right thing. But it's not going to go away, and the earlier we can continue the conversations, as Mr. Thacker said, about collaboration and partnership, the better off we'll be, so that people aren't caught by surprise at the end. And then I'll yield at that and touch on other points as needed.
So, and I don't know what the difference between a guardian versus a deputized individual is, but I'm hearing potential cost savings right off the bat. It's not a deputized individual. But who makes that decision? Is that a school board decision or a sheriff decision?
Yeah, currently it's the sheriff, and that's part of what's going to be readdressed is that I'll just tell you that even when I was in Tallahassee 2 weeks ago, that was some of the conversations that were taking place is, we don't know that really the sheriff making the decision, these are just conversations that Congress made, that really the sheriff making the decision for the school board was really the right way to set it, maybe, and then other people would say, no, doing it that way is the right decision. Then there's that ownership piece of who's ultimately accountable, responsible, and that's happening in the ether as well. But currently, if the sheriff says that it can't be guardians, then our hands are tied and we're not able to use guardians. And I will tell you that there are legislators that intended for school boards to be able to use guardians as opposed to deputies or otherwise, and we're a little surprised that in some instances they weren't able to. So they're looking at it from a funding standpoint. You guys spent X because you wanted this, but you could have spent Y and got the same, right, in theory, out of it. So maybe it's not a matter of money, maybe it's a matter of how you allocate it and who you utilize.
Because I assume it's all training. I mean, there was an SRO even at the school where the tragic
Correct.
occurred.
Well,
but it's how they're trained and everything that follows through.
Just my 2 cents worth on the guardians, because I do have a very strong opinion on the guardians, and it's not that I don't think they can be trained. I don't think there's anything scarier to me than having somebody with a gun in their hand that's afraid. And the people who do it every day are law enforcement people. I'm sure some of them are afraid when they get the situations. I'd be shocked if they're not, but they're trained and they know what to do. As somebody who we want to nurture and care for our kids full-time, I get very concerned with them having a gun. Where do they keep their guns? Who knows who's got the guns when they all run out in the hall? If one of these guys, people run in the hall, they got a uniform on. We know who they are. They're not hidden. The idea of not being trained law enforcement.
Like I said, I don't know the difference between the two.
They're not trained law enforcement. They could be retired.
It's a police officer or a teacher with a gun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Clarence, I guess to get the opinion of the rest of the board, I don't know if y'all can do this or not, but as the school board, would you want that responsibility to have the decision to decide on guardians versus a cop?
I think ultimately it'll be.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I think ultimately it will be left to school boards. I'll just be on the record as saying I prefer an SRO. Absolutely, sure. I'm not saying I'm probably not as strong against the Guardian program. I think you could get there somehow, someday. I don't think the plan they have in place in the current bill gets us there.
Sure.
I think you could get there. I would much rather, though, have St. Cloud Police, Kissimmee Police, or Osceola County Sheriff's Department. But I will say this, and Mr. Washington touched on it, I think you should plan, we should all be planning right now. The state is not going to fund it. They're going to tell us that we have to do it, something. Which I've been for since I was campaigning for this back in 2012, 2013. But they are not going to fund it, and so we're going to have to find a way, the right way, the best way, to keep all our kids in this county safe.
When you say not going to fund it, not
They're going to tell us we have to
the
do it, but
levels
they're not
we
going to
had
add
or
any
the
money to
level
pay
less than
for
what we
it.
got.
They'll give us direction, but they won't tell us where the money's coming from.
Unfunded mandate.
Well, I know, but I'm saying, is the outlook that what you're hearing is that you're gonna get the equivalent? Because it's one thing for us to plan for another $8 million like we did this last year, right?
Sure.
We can plan for that.
Yeah.
Planning for $16 million is a different conversation.
Mr. Weiser might know.
So, I mean, that's why I'm saying, because that's, I mean, we don't know if they're gonna give us more, or are they gonna give us, or are they gonna give us less? I mean, that's possible, so I didn't know
But if
if
you
y'all
see a
had a.
strong push towards the Guardian program, you'll probably see less funding come in to fund an SRO.
Yeah, because it was tough.
So, I mean,
If I may.
Sure.
And I'm gonna give you my opinion on the Guardian, and I feel the same way as Clarence. Not only that, I think that when it comes to the safety of our children in our community, that decision should be left in the hands of professionals. I'm sorry, school board is not a professional in law enforcement, and we're not professionals in law enforcement. They are. And so that decision should be left up to them. To have an individual that's not a professional with a gun in school, now you just brought a gun in school that should have never been there. A gun that can be taken away from a professional. I mean, they have enough struggles themselves, and they're professionals at that. So personally, I think that that decision should be left up to them. And our legislators, as much respect I have for them, they should start respecting those that really know what they're doing in this case. As elected officials, we shouldn't be making those decisions.
Just for a quick clarification with the Guardian piece, it's not, just to make sure everyone understands, when you're talking about the Guardian, you're not necessarily talking about just, Coach Bill now all of a sudden walking around with a weapon. It would be potentially a retired law enforcement officer that then instead serves as a guardian for that, but isn't still serving as a law enforcement officer. Maybe be a retired military personnel that's been trained in all of the elements that would need to be, and ultimately the oversight and training still falls back to the PD and the sheriff to make sure that everybody is in concert. I say that only as a point of clarification, because if we don't have that framework, our minds are going to go that we're just talking about putting a weapon in the hands of anybody or everybody that's on our campuses, and that's not the intent. To answer your question is, I think funding will remain the same, maybe tick up if we're lucky, but I think it'll remain the same.
Thanks.
Let me give you some perspective if I can, because Jeff and I have talked about this extensively. If we all reflect many, many years ago, why did we put SROs in the schools to begin with? Some 40-some years ago, we put them in there to be role models for our children, to teach civics classes, to teach DARE classes, to be in an age where they made an impact into the schools. What happened to South Florida was a complete abomination as far as what the sheriff's office didn't do. No slighting of them, but they defied everything that we train about and we believe in. We've had school resource officers in the school. Their role is much more than just security. They investigate crimes. They act as victim advocates. They work with children. They mentor children. They protect children. They are on a daily basis with our staffs to look at investigative follow-ups, child abuse cases, so many other things. The Guardian program was kind of a knee-jerk reaction. It's a stopgap measure, and it's security in a vacuum, in my candid opinion, because you cannot give somebody 120 hours of training, put a gun on their hip, and expect them to respond appropriately to some kind of shooter scenario, or deal with any of those hosts of those other things that go on. I'm also not a big fan of, candidly, school board police departments, because then what happens, it disconnects the kids from the community. Your police departments need to be in the schools knowing who their kids are, knowing who their high-risk kids are, knowing who those children are that are problematic so that they are red flagged appropriately, so what happened down in South Florida never happens again. It's an expensive proposition. One of the things that Jeff and I talked about is we're beefing up our reserve program, so when guys do retire, they go into the reserve status and they can work this function, still keeping their law enforcement credentials, still staying active. There's some alternative means, but I think what you found were a couple sheriffs across the state that politically took advantage of kind of doing some empire building for security purposes, because for whatever reason they couldn't obtain the funding to put in the schools. It's a real problem. The ongoing training that is required, the ability. We have two full-time school resource officers in the high school, and they candidly run their tails off every day, keeping up with that many kids.
Yep.
And it's a real challenge. And looking at the threats, a lot of discussion amongst the Florida police chiefs, but almost unilaterally, and Jeff can weigh in on this, they're all in the same opinion. We need to find a way, a mechanism to fund it properly, and to put the necessary technology in the schools that we're moving on, which have been remarkable what we're doing right now with Mutual Link and some of the other things. But not a fan at all because of what they can't do. And the problem there is lack of communication, lack of training, lack of knowledge, all of those other things. And candidly, it's going to be a challenge for anybody to maintain one of those programs long term. And the school resource officers provide such a valuable resource day in and day out, well beyond the security factors.
I couldn't agree more. And just to be blunt, I mean, and I think I said it up front, I'm 100% for having a police officer or a deputy sheriff in each and every school. I think what it comes down to is if the county hits a hiccup, the city gets a hiccup in their budget, either city, and comes to this point and they start to say, where do we have to cut? And we say, well, this is really the school district's responsibility. That's when the hand of this board will be forced. And we may have to turn somewhere else. I certainly hope we don't get to that point. And that's kind of why we're having this meeting, because we want to keep this great relationship that we have. But certainly, we know what we have a mandate on us, and what we're asking from each of you is to be able to fund a portion of this, even though we have increased our funding. But and I think some counties have already experienced this. I think Manatee County was one of them, if I remember correctly, where the county just said, no, we're not going to fund it. And that really does force the hand of the school district to then make a decision that they may have to go to a guardian program. And hopefully, as Mr. Weishatter stated, that we can find retired officers or retired military, the right people, I think, that have the training to do it. I don't want to see us get there. I hope we don't get there. But I think each and every county, so each and every school district is going to be having this communication with their municipalities and their county commissions, because I think this is going to be an ongoing unfunded mandate.
So we can let you know from Kissimmee's standpoint, when we worked out the deal last year for this upcoming school year, that's it. It's from that point on, for the 5-year planning period, we're going to basically fund what we funded. So as long as the costs don't go down, we're in. If the costs go down, then we just have to look at it. And if it's something that you can't afford and it's something that we can, we will. So from our standpoint, we do not see backing out of this arrangement.
Mr. Janer,
I'm good.
And I think that we need to see, I mean, it's too early in the game, we need to see what direction they're taking. I don't think they're gonna remove funding. It will be political suicide for them to do that. But let's just see.
Don't be so sure.
Well, let's see what direction they take. It could be that the funding stays the same. And like the city manager said, we planned. When we made this decision to partner last year when it came in front of us, we planned for 5 years. If we have to go back and sit and restructure, the city of Kissimmee is willing to do it. And I'm pretty sure county and St. Cloud will do the same. Our priority is those children, and we just want to make sure that it's done the right way. I just want to make sure that you guys listen to those that are the professionals when they speak, because they're the ones that know what's best when it comes to security of our children. And I think we're going to be fine.
And just a quick comment I was going to make earlier too is the Florida School Boards Association is working in conjunction with the sheriffs and the police and trying to work with the Association of County and the League of Cities. No one is trying to operate or make decisions alone on this. Those of you that don't know why I'm referencing that, I'm the incoming president for the Florida School Board Association. So that's the context that I'm referencing when I bring that up. And so I agree. I mean, and trust me, I'm sharing just facts, right? So as I'm offering things and commenting things, I'm just clarifying points of this is what a guardian really is or what it isn't, not whether or not it is or isn't the right decision, just what it is that's being referenced when someone uses guardian. Because in the community, people very much misunderstand what that actually means. And I'm not trying to have the conversation right now about whether or not it's right or wrong. I actually agree with what's been shared. I mean, the partnership that we have with the PDs and with the Sheriff's Office in Osceola County for the school district is a blessing and is tremendous. And all of you guys as partners have stepped up to say we're going to put own personal biases, opinions, budgets, concerns, constraints aside, and we're going to come together to do what's right for our community. And that's what I said at the beginning of the conversation, is that it's one of those unique aspects of how we all choose to work together, and I'm proud of that as someone who lives in and grew up in this community. My points are solely just to clarify what is or what isn't, and truth be told, the way this conversation has to continue, not just here, but collectively, is each of our respective state associations and organizations linking up on this, because it's impacting each and every one of us, and all of us in our respective areas or across the state are trying to solve this problem together, and we have to stay linked up on it. Otherwise, somebody splinters off and it becomes an us or them scenario, and this is too important of a discussion for that to ever happen. So my points were purely points of clarification.
Don?
Thank you, sir. There's a reality side of this too, and I think this is probably the point you guys really wanted to have the conversation because of how we could affect each other. The budget went up from our law enforcement arm of about $1.75 million to $4.9 million. It was a 177% increase to our budget that was not expected. And that's a big priority jump. So we're going to have, the county commission is going to have to make some tough decisions about what are we not going to do going forward in this next year's budget if that commitment stays the same. So everybody wants, you know, I think we want the top law enforcement there, the ones that are trained in the schools, of course. But I think we've got to make some tough decisions with regard to how do we move forward.
And that was my point exactly.
Yes, I think I picked up on it, but I thought throwing out the numbers would.
Yes. No, we get that, and just to make it clear.
That's why we're here having this conversation. We talked about it earlier.
I don't know if I can't speak for everybody on this.
You're
board,
having the
I
conversation.
certainly do myself. I mean, I pride myself on what we've been able to do as a board. I mean, we have the lowest administrative cost in the state of Florida. We do not spend money at the top here at Billback Avenue. It doesn't happen. We do as much as we can to be fiscally responsible. We build our buildings under the state cap, so we are doing everything we can. We're going to be discussing some transportation and school start time changes that may or may not pass, but we're going to have that discussion. But all goes back to saving money and trying to do what's best for our employees and what's best for our community. So, I mean, in a way, that's us saying, hey, we're going to do all we can. Yeah. We appreciate you doing all that you can.
I know the three of us that are here are supportive. The other two, I don't think they are, though.
Yeah.
We only need three.
So are you saying on the record that Commissioner Hawkins does not support public education?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
On the record.
Wow.
That's good.
And I believe that this needs to be a legislative priority for all of us when we head to Tallahassee this year. That when we go out there and we talk to our legislators, we just have to make our point, what the issue is. And it really shouldn't be an issue. We're talking about the safety of our children. This should not be an issue at all. This should be a priority for them to make sure that that funding is there. But it's our job when we go out there to Tallahassee to legislate for other issues that we have. But this should be a top priority for the entire county as we go to Tallahassee.
And I think you're going to see it a top priority for just about each and every school district around, and probably county too, because every school board's having the same conversation with their county commissioners as we are with you, and you. But you guys, I think you guys cover, what percentage of the schools does I don't know if Lester or Randy know, but what percentage of our schools are covered by the sheriff's department?
He has.
It's about 80. It's 80%. So we know that the county commission is bearing, not to diminish what the two cities are doing, because we certainly appreciate that, but we understand in this, especially by the number you just threw out there, we do really appreciate it.
I was saving it. So
Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We really appreciate
Who invited Don?
I was going to sit back there, so you guys
didn't
called
let
me
me
up.
speak, but that was a percentage. That was a percentage I was going to throw out at you.
Turn off his mic.
Well, the good news is if we all figure out how to save money and health insurance and everything else, then we're good to go.
That's a long-term thing.
Way to bring it full circle.
Commissioner Janer,
What?
you said,
No, I was just throwing out a common sense comment.
St. Cloud City, anything else?
We modified our budget to make sure we had officers in, and like the mayor said, we're not gonna back up on that.
Thank you.
But we all need to go and tell the legislators, stop shoving it down our throat, fund it. You came up with it, be a part of it. And I'd like to thank you for inviting us all here.
We appreciate you.
With that,
With that, I don't see any need, if nobody else has anything further to add. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time, and we can stand adjourned.
Thanks, sir. Thank you for having us.
Well, here's the thing.